Today is Friday, September 3rd. We have an update about the historic storm that traveled more than 1,000 miles and impacted several states. What we know so far about an attack overseas said to be inspired by ISIS, and why a state prosecutor is now the one facing charges in a high-profile shooting case. Plus, we're talking Labor Day travel, new Apple technology coming to only certain states, and how today's release of another Marvel superhero movie is breaking barriers. Welcome to The Newsworthy. All the day's news in around 10 minutes. Fast, fair, fun, and on the go. I'm Erica Mandy. Thanks so much for being here. You ready? Let's do this. Ida has finally moved out to sea, but unfortunately, the death toll from this historic storm keeps rising. So far, most deaths have been reported more than 1,000 miles from where the powerful hurricane first made landfall in Louisiana. At least 46 people died in the Northeast. And overall, the storm is responsible for about 60 deaths across 8 states. The most widespread destruction is from flooding, most recently in New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Connecticut. More than 9 inches of rain fell in just a few hours. The pouring rain turned streets and subway platforms into raging rivers. Emergency workers had to go out on boats to save thousands of people from their homes or cars, and more rescue crews had to save hundreds of people who were trapped in New York's subways. Homes were also ripped apart by several tornadoes in Maryland, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Massachusetts. They uprooted trees, tossed cars, and left roads covered with debris. Meanwhile, Louisiana and Mississippi are still dealing with widespread devastation. When Ida hit Louisiana on Sunday, it was the 5th strongest hurricane to ever hit the mainland U.S. Some power finally returned in the New Orleans area yesterday, but hundreds of thousands of people are still in the dark, which means no power or AC during a heat advisory. Many of them also lack clean drinking water and gasoline. President Biden plans to visit Louisiana today to survey the damage. A New Zealand supermarket was the site of a terror attack overnight. A man who's being called a violent extremist stabbed 6 shoppers. New Zealand's prime minister said the man was a Sri Lankan national who was inspired by the ISIS terror group but acted alone. The man has apparently been considered a person of national security interest for the last 5 years, and police were able to shoot and kill him at the scene because they were already following him. Officers say they stopped the attack within 60 seconds, but in that time he was able to hurt 6 people, some of them critically. A former Georgia prosecutor is now charged with misconduct over her handling of a high-profile shooting. A grand jury decided to bring charges against Jackie Johnson. She was a district attorney when Ahmaud Arbery was shot and killed in Georgia. Remember, Arbery is the black man who was killed last year during a fight with 2 white men, a father and a son, in what Arbery's family believes was a racist attack. The men, Gregory and Travis McMichael, are now charged with murder. But they were not arrested for 2 months after that attack, even though it was recorded on video. Well, now the former district attorney is accused of showing favor and affection to the suspects, since one of them was previously an investigator in her office. She's also accused of obstructing law enforcement by telling them not to arrest the men. As of this morning, the former DA has not commented on these new charges, but in the past she's denied any wrongdoing in the case. She could face up to 6 years in prison. As for the McMichaels, they go to trial this fall. They pleaded not guilty, but they face life in prison and a death sentence. Historically, it's been pretty unusual for a U.S. president to criticize a Supreme Court's decision. That is, until former President Trump did it often, and now President Biden has done it too. It's over the High Court's decision not to block a strict new abortion law in Texas. Remember, the law bans the procedure as soon as doctors can detect a heartbeat, and that's usually about 6 weeks into a pregnancy. Abortion providers and others tried to appeal the law at the Supreme Court, but in a 5-4 decision, the justices decided to let the law stand. Well, in a new statement, President Biden said that ruling, quote, unleashes unconstitutional chaos. He said his administration will launch a widespread effort to respond to the court's decision, though his specific plan is not clear yet. U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland also said the Justice Department is, quote, evaluating all options to protect the constitutional rights of women, including access to abortion. That said, some people are happy with the High Court's decision. The leader of the largest anti-abortion group in Texas called it the, quote, most significant accomplishment of the pro-life movement in Texas. Looking ahead, the Supreme Court is planning to tackle this issue in the fall, but with a separate case. They're hearing a case about Mississippi trying to enforce an abortion ban after 15 weeks of pregnancy. But it's not just those 2 laws people are paying attention to. A lot of states are hoping to take advantage of a more conservative tilt on the bench now. Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who was an open advocate for allowing abortions, died last year, and her replacement, Justice Amy Coney Barrett, voted to keep the Texas law in place. It seems the United States has been wasting millions of COVID-19 vaccine doses. NBC News got a hold of government data that shows at least 15.1 million doses have had to be thrown away since March, and it says even that is probably an undercount. There are a lot of reasons why a vaccine might have to go in the trash. For example, if the vial is cracked or a freezer malfunctions, sometimes there are also just more doses ordered than people who want them. Though still, far more shots have been used than wasted. So far, more than 372 million vaccine doses have been given in the U.S. That means 62% of the population has gotten at least one shot. Meanwhile, the U.S. is planning to invest another $3 billion in the vaccine supply chain in the coming weeks. The money will go to American manufacturers to add new production lines and facilities to make things like syringes, needles, and tubing. The funding is coming from the last relief package Congress passed and President Biden signed back in March. The White House says this will create thousands of good-paying American jobs and set the country up for future vaccination efforts. But activists are also calling for the Biden administration to ramp up vaccine manufacturing around the world. So far, 81% of COVID-19 shots have gone out in high and upper middle income countries. Less than 0.5% of doses have gone to low income countries. More news is coming up, but first, thanks to our sponsor, Noom. Are you looking to build healthier habits, but the last thing you want is to have to follow strict rules that will only add stress and time to your daily life? I get that. Noom only asks for about 10 minutes of your day to teach you about eating and healthy habits and to check in on your progress. They know everyone is different, and so your program is customized and personalized for you and your own journey. Perhaps that's why more than 60% of users lose 5% or more of body weight, and 60% of them keep the weight off for a year or more. And to get long-term results, there cannot be too much pressure. It has to be sustainable. So with Noom, there's no need to fear ruining the whole program with just one off day. Noom helps you get back on track. So start building better habits for healthier, long-term results. Sign up for your trial at Noom.com/newsworthy. Again, sign up for your trial at Noom, that's Noom, Noom.com/newsworthy. A lot of Americans are hitting the road this Labor Day weekend. Highways are expected to be extra crowded around major cities like Washington, D.C., Atlanta, Seattle, San Francisco, Houston, and Detroit. But analysts say they likely will not be quite as packed as the Memorial Day or 4th of July weekends. That's because most kids are now back in school, and other people are worried about the latest surge of COVID-19 cases. In fact, the CDC has put out a warning. It says people who are not vaccinated against the virus should stay home, and people who are vaccinated should still take precautions like wearing a mask inside when in public and hosting gatherings outside whenever possible. American automakers are shutting down their production plants again because of the ongoing chip shortage. There just aren't enough of these needed computer chips to finish building vehicles. General Motors is pausing work at 8 North American plants over the next 2 weeks, including those that make top-selling Chevy Silverado pickup trucks. Ford and Stellantis, that make vehicles like Jeeps and Chryslers, have also planned shutdowns. This is bad news for American dealerships already struggling with inventory. In August, dealers had fewer than 1 million new vehicles available for sale. That's 72% less than in 2019. Making matters worse, some factories in Southeast Asia that make the chips had to close this summer because of COVID-19 outbreaks. So analysts say automakers can expect inventory to stay tight well into next year. It's estimated the chip shortage will cost the auto industry up to $110 billion in lost revenue by the end of 2021. Pretty soon, in some states, you may not have to worry about carrying your wallet with you anywhere. Apple wants to let you save your driver's license or state ID to its so-called Apple Wallet, just like you can with your credit cards. The tech giant says Arizona and Georgia will be the first states to accept this technology. Others will follow, including Connecticut, Iowa, Kentucky, Maryland, Oklahoma, and Utah. And in those states, even TSA will let you show your ID on your phone. Apple doesn't plan to stop there either. It says the Wallet app will be able to store digital versions of your home keys, hotel room keys, and corporate IDs. Some people have brought up security concerns, but Apple says this will be protected by encryption software. These functions will start becoming available on iOS 15 that will likely roll out this fall. For the very first time, a Marvel movie is coming out about an Asian American superhero. Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings is set sometime after the last two Avengers movies. It stars Chinese-Canadian actor Simu Liu. Most of the rest of the cast is of East Asian descent as well. Marvel Studios says its creative teams made sure the characters and themes were authentic and not racial stereotypes. To do this, they worked with organizations like Gold House that represents Asian Americans in Hollywood. Shang-Chi is being released today in theaters only. Then in 45 days, it'll be available on Disney+. All right, that's it for the main news today, but now it's time for Feel Good Friday, when we bring you one extra feel-good or positive news story before the weekend. But first, this episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. Before I started The Newsworthy, I worked for more than a decade in traditional TV news, and I saw a lot of sad stuff in person every day. It's a big part of why I left and started this podcast, not only for myself, but also for others who felt bombarded by too much sad, alarming news. And I realized if we're not careful, any stress that we face in our lives repeatedly can lead to unnecessary anxiety. But thanks to therapy, it doesn't have to. And BetterHelp offers professional counseling that is both convenient and affordable. BetterHelp will assess your needs and match you with your own licensed professional therapist in a safe and private online environment, so you can connect from the comfort of your home. BetterHelp's counselors specialize in a variety of areas, including stress, anxiety, relationships, sleeping, trauma, anger, grief, self-esteem, and more. I want you to start living a happier life today. And as a Newsworthy listener, you'll get 10% off your first month by visiting betterhelp.com/newsworthy. Join more than 1 million people who have taken charge of their mental health. Again, that's BetterHelp, H-E-L-P, betterhelp.com/newsworthy. Now back to Feel Good Friday. Artist Richard Hutchins has gone from living on the streets to selling his paintings to big-name stars. He sold more than $200,000 worth of artwork in the last 4 months alone to people like Oprah Winfrey, Will Smith, and Steve Harvey. This has always been his dream, but it's been a tough road. For 2 years, he was in jail. In that time, he didn't have art supplies, but never gave up painting. He used hair from his beard to make a brush and created colors using Kool-Aid, toothpaste, and the dye from Skittles and M&Ms. Hutchins painted hundreds of envelopes, which he mailed to family, friends, and strangers. Finally, Hutchins went to trial, was found not guilty, and was released. He got a job at a studio, but sadly, it burned down and 800 pieces of art were destroyed. Hutchins ended up homeless for the next 6 years. Well, this past April, his life changed for the better. He met a former music manager who has a nonprofit called Dream Machine to help people reach their goals. That music manager bought Hutchins $2,000 worth of supplies and set up a website to sell his art. Within hours of that site going live, Hutchins sold $50,000 worth of art. And those envelopes he painted in jail, copies now sell for $700, and the originals are going for $2,500 a piece. And they're really impressive to look at. We'll share some of the pictures on Instagram later today. All right, we'll be back tomorrow with our special edition Saturday episode. We're chatting with the founder of Scott's Cheap Flights about what to do if your flight is canceled or rescheduled and how to score great deals in the first place. Then we're off on Monday for Labor Day, so we'll be back on Tuesday with your next news roundup. For now, thanks for listening and have a great day.